Now, before we do our review of the Imola Grand Prix, I also want to start off by asking you guys whether this is the sort of thing you want us to do, whether it's like sort of race reactions, whether it's something you want us to look into, like stats, historical things, uh, the something like the best Formula One drivers to never win a world championship, that sort of thing. If you want me to look into more historical things rather than topical and reaction things, feel free to let me know in the comments below. But we are here with a reaction to the Imola Grand Prix, or the Gran Premio del Made in Italy e d'Emilia Romagna, Enzo e Dino Ferrari in Bologna, or near Bologna. And first thing I want to say is fun race. Second thing I want to say is, well, blooming out, Max. Incredible move. So impressed. So impressed. Take a bow. Well deserved the win, even with all the safety guards and everything like that. Still well deserved win for Max Verstappen. But I sort of want to touch on some of the. Well, one of them was a big talking point anyway. And then sort of look at Big Crooks and basically going, why was that race just so damn good? And we're going to look into that together. So, let's jump into it, eh? Let's start off with what was probably the big talking point, Colapinto-watch. Now, before I start talking about Colapinto and his performance over the weekend, first thing I want to do is actually address some comments that were made in the previous video that I did talking about the Jack Doohan Franco Colapinto switch. Because there was some like going, I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes, comes to this. This can you not see Franco Colapinto is a much better driver than Jack Doohan? Well, define much. That's the first thing. Define much. I think Franco Colapinto edges it. If there was a teammate battle, we're talking like a matter of 1 or 2 points. But also, can you judge an F1 driver by their junior career? Or can you judge an F1 driver for being a bad driver just because their dad was a racing driver and they cheated their way into the sport? Now, in the first part, if it's all based on junior careers, then Nick de Vries would be a multiple world champion. In fact, Max Verstappen wouldn't be that good if it was based on junior careers, because he won a couple of F4 races. He was quite fast tracked into it, right? But if it's based off junior careers, we'd be looking at Nick de Vries as a 10-time world champion. There'd be other drivers back in the past. I think one of the worst drivers of all time, it might have even been Rosset, potentially. I have to look into it. It was either Rosset or Inoue. They had a really good junior career. I can't remember which one it is. If Rosset and Inoue had bad Formula 2 careers, it's obviously not them I'm thinking of, but there was certainly one where I was like, what's just happened here? Because they showed signs that are much better than they actually are. And once again, if we're basing it off, this person can't be a good Formula 1 driver because their dad was a racing driver and they cheated their way. Okay, Damon Hill wasn't as good as his dad, but he was still a world champion, still deserved. Max Verstappen, his dad was a racing driver too. Didn't do Max any harm, and we're not talking down Max. So to mention that Jack Doohan's cheated his way, let's say, or something like that, bit of a wild take, to be quite honest. And ultimately, it's an expensive sport. Doesn't matter which person you are. You need either sponsorship or a really rich dad or family member to fund your racing career. So that's by the by. Like I say, Franco Colapinto is a better driver than Jack Doohan, but I think the margins are much tighter than people are thinking it is. So, with that in mind, let's look at Colapinto this weekend. How did he do? Well, if you were to look on paper, it's quite unremarkable. He qualified in 15th, started the race in 16th because of I think it was a small grid penalty, which we'll talk about in a minute, and finished in 16th with 3 people that couldn't finish the race. So on paper, not great, right? But I actually think it was a fairly decent drive from Colapinto. His qualifying in Q1, it was okay. I mean, he got into the top 15 and then crashed. And there was also the miscommunication happening in the pit lane where he basically went out too soon. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt there. Brand new team, communication issues, it's going to happen. We're seeing it with Lewis Hamilton that he's having communication issues with his team. So Franco Colapinto misreading a gesture that was made in the pit lane and from the pit crew. It happens. It's a weird qualifying situation to have a red flag halfway through, to have an estimated start time, which probably needs addressing, by the way. That estimated start time thing, I feel like needs addressing big time. It's the second time that's caused confusion. Once with a team, once with a driver. We had it happen to Mercedes. That might need looking into. If I was one of the GPDA, the Grand Prix Drivers Association, I'd be raising that up with the FIA, going, "Don't confuse matters." Because we're thinking we've got to go out straight away. The team's thinking we've got to go out straight away. We're edging out onto the fast lane. It's not helpful. It's causing problems. I'd perhaps look into that. The crash, though, this was the thing that held Franco Colapinto back. He is a quick driver, but a crashy driver. Andrea De Cesaris vibes. It's not a great look. What I will say in terms of a positive thing to say for Colapinto and to give him hope, Felipe Massa also started out his career with this fast but crashing. And as soon as it was ironed out, he was a solid racing driver. And I think Colapinto could be exactly the same. Maybe not to the point where he's challenging for a world title, but I can certainly see him in like the top 5 or top 10 of a world championship with no problems whatsoever. So as long as that gets ironed out, and especially in a cost cap age, that will be important. But there's hope. I still see some hope for Colapinto. We might not see the best of him in Monaco. But I feel like once we get past Monaco, it will look better for him. And by the way, I want to mention this. If the 5 races thing ends up being true and he gets sacked off after 5 races, Alpine's in the mud. Like, what are you doing, Alpine? This isn't the sort of thing where it's a plug and play, or you can just get in the car and drive. We're not in the 90s anymore where we have basically paid drivers and you can come in for a couple of races. We're in this is serious. You have engineers you have to build bonds with. You have a team you have to build bond with. A car that you have to understand. Now you've made your move, Alpine. You need to stick with Franco. Because if you switch out for, is it Aaron? Is it the surname? You've basically wrecked 3 Formula 2 driver careers. I mean that. So sort that out, Alpine, very quickly. Whatever's happening in the background, it cannot be affecting your second seat, basically. Let's talk about more positive things, because like I say, it was an exciting race, and a lot of it was to do with the tyres. The tyres caused a situation where everyone had to do more than one stop. There was a lot of strategies in the air. I'm still not sure what the correct strategy was meant to be, and I don't think any of the teams actually mastered a strategy. Nobody got it because it wasn't a simple one. It wasn't a case of a one stop and you just figure out which one, which stop you have to do. You had to do 2 or 3, and that provides chaos. Even without the safety cars or the virtual safety car, we would have had chaos, absolute chaos. And I sort of want to touch on this a bit more, in because I've heard some people going, well, okay, then let's do it so that you have to do 2 pit stops. Sort of like what we're doing in Monaco, but just do it everywhere, right? Or maybe have it violent, all the tyres are violently different, everything like that. I think what we need to do is something, in a weird way, a bit simpler, and let's use the Imola template. Now, this is where I'm going to start getting a little bit technical, so I'm sorry about this. So, here's the best way of describing it. Most people, when they look at the races, they see the red tyre being the soft, the yellow tyre being the medium, and the white tyre being the hard tyre, and think that that's the case for all the tracks, right? That it's exactly the same tyre. It's not quite true. There are actually, I can't believe I'm about to say this, 7 different tyres. Now, ignore the C3 Proto, that's a prototype one, but there's 7 different tyres. So we had, this was obviously from a few years ago, but this was almost like the range that we used to have, where we'd have the C0, C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, right? And basically, as you can see from the colour chart, the C5 is softer than the C4, which is softer than the C3, C2, C1, right? Now, how it works is for every Grand Prix, they select 3 of these tyres and make one of them the soft, one of them the medium, one of them the hard. There used to be a time, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, where we had, I think it was, all of them had different colours, and we had pink tyres, and we had, what was the other? Purple tyres. It got really confusing, but in a sense, we've kept the same. It's just that we've got similar colours, so you know that the red is always the soft, the yellow is always the medium, the white is always the hard. So, for example, for the Imola Grand Prix last year, we had, bear with me a second, as you can see, it's the one at the top. This was what we had last year, where we had C3, C4, C5. So the C3 was the hard tyre, even though it's the middle of the range, it was the hard tyre. C4 is the medium tyre, even though in some tracks it could be a soft tyre. And C5 was the soft tyre. What did Imola do this year? They went one stage softer. C4, C5, C6. Now, qualifying made it a bit messy because basically what happened was that the softest tyre actually wasn't as quick as everyone thought it was because it basically broke down after half a lap. So the C5 was slower in the first sector, but it would end up being quicker over the whole lap in a weird way. Caused a lot of chaos. I was a Ferrari fan. I hated it for that reason, but that's by the by. But what did that mean? It meant that the harder tyres, the C3, 4, and 5 that we had last year, were solid enough that they could just do one stop. And the C4, C5, C6 tyres meant that they couldn't. Anyone who's seen these races, if you were to actually look at when they do one stops, it's normally they go from a red to a white or a yellow to a white, you know. But if you're basing it off this, the hardest tyre, that C4, for this year was the equivalent to the yellow tire. You cannot make a race on yellow. Can you see where I'm thinking here, right? If you're struggling to understand it, feel free to put a comment below, because it takes a lot of understanding. But ultimately, it was softer, and so it made it near on impossible to do a race with only one pit stop. Now, if that's what Imola did, why don't they do that for other races? I mean, the environmental thing, they are recycling and reusing these tires. They get melted down, they get recreated, I'm sure. So that's that, right? And ultimately, this made it so it was near on impossible. It would have been slower to do a one-stop race. And the benefits of this are long term, right? I mentioned about the recycling things. There's other things as well. The more time these tyres are used, the more feedback that we get as the public. Because, interesting enough, when it comes to tyres, you might think that these tyres, they're just raced around with. They're basically they're like the batteries. They're just used for the racing. No one else needs them. It's just to make the cars go, the cars move, right? But ultimately, the drivers give feedback. The tires, even though they're similar sort of levels of hardness and softness, they actually tweak them every race in the way that the compounds are. Maybe the smoothness and things like of the tire, and the drivers give feedback based on that particular formula that they've used for that tire. And what happens? Pirelli takes that feedback, they use it to help make their tires for us. So everything you're seeing is research. So guess what? More stops, more research, better tires for us. It's a win-win-win. It's a huge win. So Pirelli might be cooking here. This is the first time they've tried it, and it's worked out brilliantly. I suspect for the Monaco Grand Prix, they've done a similar sort of thing, given the fact that they've enforced a two-stop race. But they might be cooking. This might be a bit of a rabbit hole we go down into, but the next few races that come along might be worth comparing the C numbers of it for this year compared to last year. Are they slowly providing us with a bit more excitement, a bit more overtaking? Because that race was freaking exciting, and there's a reason for it. Pirelli cooked. Now, that was a very interesting science lesson, I'm sure. If you want me to, again, if you want me to go into more details of with these sort of videos and try and work things out, based off that, a bit more of a scientific method, then feel free to mention it, and I'll perhaps consider it in future videos. But that was the Imola Grand Prix review. It was a brilliant race. Like I say, fantastic race. Great stories around the track. Yes, Charles Leclerc got screwed over. Yes, Lewis Hamilton got a bit lucky. Yes, Max Verstappen did a ridiculous move, which was incredible. Yes, McLaren I don't think they did it perfectly, but it's fine. Yes, Albon was so close to a podium, which I felt for him for. And yes, Alonso still hasn't scored points. Great. Is Alonso washed? No, but my God, is he unlucky. But anyways, until the next race, which is this weekend at Monaco, Take care of yourselves and see you around.